Alright guys, so today I'm going to be changing the oil and cleaning out the oil spinner on the 2017 Honda Grom. And the things you will need to do this are going to be, I chose 10W40 oil, but you could do 10W30 or that would work. So I got this at, I think it was AutoZone. It was like $7 a quart. You're only going to need one of them. I just picked up two while I was there. And then you could possibly also need the actual gasket that sits in between the cover and the actual motor. Usually it lasts like 2 to 3 times, but for this case I'm not going to be using one because I'm pretty confident I'm not going to break it. So yeah, let's just jump right into this. Alright guys, so the next step, or the first step I should say, is to drain all the oil out of the motor into preferably something that you can like drain it into. What I'm using for this is it's going to be a 17mm socket, and I'm just using a 3/8 ratchet. So yeah, let's just get that bolt off and then we'll go from there. Alright guys, so the bolt is going to be under here and I'm just going to take that off. And my oil pan's really full, so it's just gonna probably overflow it. You can start your motor to get the oil a little bit warm. I didn't, but that's probably preferred. And you're just gonna wanna reach in there and grab the washer so that that doesn't get anywhere. And then just wait for it to drain. And once that's done, we'll move on to the next step. Alright guys, so I have just finished draining out all the oil. And the next step that we have to do is I'm gonna have to take off the rear set right here. And for this top bolt right here, I think it's a 3/4 socket. And then the bottom nut right there is a 12mm socket. And then this only applies if you have like an aftermarket exhaust, because it's mounted to the rear set, so you're gonna have to take that off. I believe with the stock one, the stock Grom exhaust, you shouldn't have to take that off. So yeah, I'm just gonna get to taking this rear set off, and then once that's off, I'll get to the next step. Alright guys, so I just removed the rear set, and so this was the top bolt that screws onto there. I just pulled the rear set off, and then this bolt right here is the one that attaches the exhaust, and then this is the bottom bolt. So make sure to keep the bolts like all in a separate like space so you know which bolts are which. And then for the next part, I'm just gonna move the rear set out the way. For the next part, you're gonna have to take off all of these little bolts around the case. I think there's probably like 8 of them. So I'm gonna get to taking those off, and then I will fill you in with the next step once they're off. Alright guys, so before I actually go ahead and take off the case bolts, I am going to need to, I forgot this step, you have to take off the actual cable for the clutch. So last time that I did this, this was kind of tricky, but you just need to get some pliers in there to hold the actual clutch open while you can fish out the little wire. So once I get that off, then we can begin the process of taking out the bolts, and then I'll see you at the next step. Alright guys, so I just removed the cable that leads to the clutch, and now we can begin taking off the actual case bolts themselves. It is an 8mm socket, 1/4 inch I think, with an extension on there, because some of the bolts back here aren't going to be able to reach without the extension. And then it's a 1/4 inch ratchet. So once I get these off, then we will move on to the next step. Alright guys, so I have just removed all of the bolts around the case. Here they all are. There's 10 of them, and they are all the same size, so you can mix them up, so it doesn't really matter which they go back into. I moved all the clutch cable out of the way, and then along with some wiring harness stuff that was also attached to that, I moved that out the way. So it should be free to pull off now. I'm gonna do that off camera just because last time I did this, it was pretty hard to actually get a grip on the actual case itself to rip it off, because once your hands get dirty with like grease and oil, you know, they slip off of there. So I'm gonna do that off camera, and then I'll meet you guys back with the next step. Alright guys, so I have just removed the case right here, and this is going to be the spinner right here. Now underneath here in this little slot sits this little tray that I just removed. This is where the metal, most of the metal you're going to find is going to be in here. So you're going to want to wipe that out and then put it back in. It only goes in one way. As you see, it's like a little bit slanted, so it only fits in there one way. And then these bolts right here are going to be in 8mm, same as the ones that were around the case. So once I get that off, I will move to the next step. Alright guys, so I just took off the bolts for the spinner, and they are actually a 10mm, sorry, not an 8. And then I took off the cover, and then I took a rag and just went in there and cleaned it out. And then I also cleaned out the screen. The screen's only going to be able to go in one way, so it'll sit in there just like that. No bolts or anything, just stays in place like that. And then for this, make sure you don't put it on this way, because that's not the way it's supposed to go. It's supposed to go, actually it's supposed to go this way. So you put that back on there like that, and you put in the screws. The first time I did this, I almost put it back on the other way because it doesn't look like it's supposed to go this way, but this is actually the way it's supposed to go. And these bolts are going to be tricky. I know some people like to put Loctite on the bolts, but I don't really see a need for it because I've gone 2,000 miles, and last time I didn't Loctite the bolts, and I took them off and they were pretty stuck on there. Another thing I would recommend doing is I just got something like a nail. I think it was this nail, and I put it in between the gears right there so that when I was taking it off, it doesn't spin. So I just use that nail. You can use a penny. I know a lot of people use a penny. I just didn't have one on hand, so I just used that. So yeah, once you start putting the bolts back in, then we will get to putting the cover back on and reassembling everything backwards the way we did before. So yeah. Alright guys, so I went ahead and put the cover back on for the motor, and then I tightened down all the bolts around it. This is probably the most tedious part, is just taking these bolts in and out. I went ahead and put the clutch cable back in place, and then next I just need to put the rear set back on, tighten it back up with the exhaust, and then we will get to changing the oil, or refilling it with oil. Alright guys, so I went ahead and put back all the bolts on the rear set, and it's pretty sturdy, so I went and grabbed a funnel and we got the oil. Now make sure you put the actual the drain bolt back in so that you don't end up just dumping out your oil that you poured back in there. But it requires 1 quart, so I'm just gonna go ahead and pour it all in there. And then once that's drained, we can go ahead and put the oil cap back on. I'm using just a regular food grade funnel that I found in my kitchen, so it's working alright so far. Then once that's empty, should be good. The Grom actually requires a little bit less than a quart, but I like to put in a full quart just so if you're doing wheelies, it allows a little bit more oil to get to the piston. So once that's done, I like to have a rag handy and then just wipe the excess oil off underneath it and all. And then we can go ahead and put back on a cap right here. So it's gonna go in like that. Then just tighten it down, hand tight. It's nothing too hard right here. And once you get that on, you're pretty much good to go. It took me about, I'd say overall, 45-50 minutes to do. So yeah, everything's put back on. Let's see how it runs. So it idles pretty nice. Let's wait a second and give it a nice rev. So yeah, I'd say that was a success. So yeah, if you liked the video, go ahead and give me a like on it, and I'll post more Grom videos. So hope y'all have a good rest of your day.